Karen's black Lexus SUV screeched to a halt, the tires smoking as she whipped into the handicap spot. Slamming the door, she charged towards the front door, muttering under her breath about inconsiderate cripples. But as she reached the porch, her heel caught on the edge of the wheelchair ramp, sending her tumbling down the steps. Jason watched in stunned silence from his window, his heart pounding. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. Jason gripped the wheels of his chair, trying to steady his shaking hands. Just an hour ago, he'd finished installing the wheelchair ramp, a project he'd been planning for months. It had taken weeks of struggle, countless phone calls, and every penny he could scrape together, but now it was finally done. Finally, he had safe, independent access to his own home. But as he watched Karen, the neighbor who had fought him tooth and nail over the ramp, sprawl on the ground, clutching her ankle, a dark satisfaction welled up inside him. This woman had made his life a living hell since he moved in, throwing a fit every time his wheelchair crossed her flawless lawn. She'd filed complaint after complaint, claiming the ramp was an eyesore and a liability. Now, as she struggled to stand, Jason felt a surge of vindication. "Need some help, Karen?" he called out, unable to hide the glee in his voice. Karen's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. You did this on purpose," she shrieked, gingerly getting to her feet. "Don't be ridiculous," Jason scoffed. "I built that ramp to make my life easier, not to trip you." He paused, then added, "Although I can't say I'm too upset that it did." Karen's face contorted with rage. "This isn't over, you little." The front door flew open, and Jason's neighbor, Mrs. Perez, emerged. "What on earth is going on out here?" she demanded, eyeing Karen's twisted ankle. That man sabotaged my walkway," Karen cried, pointing an accusatory finger at Jason. "I'm going to sue him for every penny he has." Mrs. Perez's brow furrowed. "I hardly think that's necessary, Karen. Jason has every right to make his home accessible. Perhaps you should be more careful when navigating his property." "Careful?" Karen screeched. "I could have been killed. This is a clear violation of the ADA, and I'm going to report it." Jason felt a surge of dread. He knew the ADA laws inside and out, having fought tooth and nail to get the ramp approved in the first place. But he also knew that Karen had a habit of twisting the rules to suit her own agenda. If she filed a complaint, it could mean months of legal battles and endless stress. Now, let's not be hasty," Mrs. Perez interjected, holding up a hand. "I'm sure we can resolve this amicably." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Amicably? Not a chance. This means war." With that, she turned and stormed back to her car, leaving Jason and Mrs. Perez staring after her in stunned silence. Jason watched with a sinking feeling as Karen peeled out of the driveway, her tires kicking up gravel. He knew this wasn't the end of it. She was a force to be reckoned with when she set her mind to something. "Don't worry, Jason," Mrs. Perez said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I'll be right there with you if she tries to cause any more trouble." Jason managed a small smile, but his heart was still racing. "I appreciate that, Mrs. Perez, but you know how relentless Karen can be. She's not going to let this go." "Well then, we'll just have to be more relentless," Mrs. Perez replied, her eyes narrowing. "I've had it up to here with her petty antics. This time, she's gone too far." Jason nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for his kind-hearted neighbor. Mrs. Perez had been a godsend since he moved in, always lending a hand or an ear when he needed it. He knew he could count on her support, but he also couldn't help but worry about the potential fallout. Later that evening, as Jason was preparing dinner, his phone started buzzing. He glanced down and felt his stomach drop. It was Karen, and she didn't sound happy. "You think you can just sabotage my property and get away with it?" she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "Karen, I didn't," Jason started, but she cut him off. "Save it, you pathetic cripple. I've already filed a complaint with the ADA, and they're launching an investigation. You're going to pay for this, one way or another." Jason's heart sank. He'd known this was coming, but hearing the words still sent a chill down his spine. "Karen, please, let's just talk this through. I'm sure we can find a reasonable solution." "Reasonable?" Karen scoffed. "The only reasonable solution is for you to tear down that eyesore of a ramp and stay off my property. If you don't, I'll make sure you regret it." Jason opened his mouth to respond, but the line had already gone dead. He stared at his phone, his hands trembling. This was exactly what he'd been dreading. Just then, the doorbell rang, and Jason wheeled over to the front door, peering out the window. His heart sank even further when he saw a uniformed ADA compliance officer standing on his porch. Taking a deep breath, Jason opened the door, bracing himself for the worst. "Mr. Johnson," the officer said, his tone formal and authoritative. "I'm Agent Daniels with the ADA Compliance Division. I'm here to investigate a complaint filed against you regarding your wheelchair ramp." Jason's mouth felt dry as he nodded. "Of course, officer. Please come in." As the agent stepped inside, Jason's mind raced. He knew the ADA laws backwards and forwards, and he was confident that his ramp was fully compliant. But the thought of being accused of violating those laws filled him with dread. "Now, Mr. Johnson," the agent began, "I understand there was an incident earlier today involving your neighbor, Mrs. Perez. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" Jason took a deep breath and recounted the events, trying to keep his voice steady. "Mrs. Perez was just coming to my aid when Karen showed up and started accusing me of sabotaging her walkway. But I can assure you, officer, that was not the case at all. I built that ramp to make my own home accessible, not to cause any harm." The agent nodded, jotting down notes. "I see. And Mrs. Perez can corroborate your version of events?" "Absolutely," Jason replied. "She was right there and saw the whole thing unfold." The agent paused, his brow furrowing. "And you say Mrs. Perez is your neighbor?" "Yes, that's right," Jason confirmed. "She's been a wonderful support system since I moved in." The agent hummed thoughtfully. "Interesting. And what is your relationship with Mrs. Perez like?" Jason blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Our relationship? Well, we're just good neighbors, really. She's always been kind and helpful." The agent nodded, scribbling more notes. "I see. And what about your relationship with Mrs. Perez's other neighbor, Mrs. Wilkins?" Jason furrowed his brow, confused by the sudden line of questioning. "Mrs. Wilkins? I don't really know her that well. We've exchanged a few pleasantries, but that's about it." The agent's expression remained neutral. I see. And what about your relationship with Mrs. Wilkins' son, Tyler?" Jason's heart began to race. "Tyler? I don't know anyone by that name. What's this all about, officer?" The agent looked up from his notes, his eyes narrowing. "Well, Mr. Johnson, it seems there may be more to this story than you're letting on. You see, Mrs. Wilkins filed a complaint against you last month, claiming you had been harassing her son." Jason felt the blood drain from his face. "What? That's not true at all. I have no idea who Tyler is, and I certainly haven't been harassing anyone." The agent held up a hand. Now, let's not get defensive. I'm simply trying to get to the bottom of this. Mrs. Wilkins claims you've been deliberately parking your wheelchair in front of her son's car, blocking him from leaving the driveway." Jason shook his head vehemently. "That's ridiculous. I've never even met Mrs. Wilkins or her son. This is all just a misunderstanding." The agent regarded him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Well, Mr. Johnson, I'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, I'd advise you to cooperate fully with the ADA compliance review. Failure to do so could result in some very serious consequences." With that, The agent turned and headed for the door, leaving Jason sitting there, stunned and confused. What on earth was going on? Mr. Johnson, the officer said, his tone formal and authoritative. I'm Agent Daniels with the aita Compliance Division. I'm here to investigate a complaint filed against you regarding your wheelchair ramp. Jason's mouth felt dry as he nodded. Of course, officer. Please come in. As the agent stepped inside, Jason's mind raced. He knew the ADA laws backwards and forwards, and he was confident that his ramp was fully compliant. But the thought of being accused of violating those laws filled him with dread. Now, Mr. Johnson, the agent began, I understand there was an incident earlier today involving your neighbor, Mrs. Perez. Can you tell me exactly what happened? Jason took a deep breath and recounted the events, trying to keep his voice steady. Mrs. Perez was just coming to my aid when Karen showed up and started accusing me of sabotaging her walkway. But I can assure you, officer, that was not the case at all. I built that ramp to make my own home accessible, not to cause any harm. The agent nodded, jotting down notes. I see. And Mrs. Perez can corroborate your version of events. Absolutely, Jason replied. She was right there and saw the whole thing unfold. The agent paused, his brow furrowing. And you say Mrs. Perez is your neighbor? Yes, that's right, Jason confirmed. She's been a wonderful support system since I moved in. The agent hummed thoughtfully. Interesting. And what is your relationship with Mrs. Perez like? Jason blinked, caught off guard by the question. Our relationship? Well, we're just good neighbors, really. She's always been kind and helpful. The agent nodded, scribbling more notes. I see. And what about your relationship with Mrs. Perez's other neighbor, Mrs. Wilkins? Jason furrowed his brow, confused by the sudden line of questioning. Mrs. Wilkins, I don't really know her that well. We've exchanged a few pleasantries, but that's about it. The agent's expression remained neutral. I see. And what about your relationship with Mrs. Wilkins' son, Tyler? Jason's heart began to race. Tyler? I don't know anyone by that name. What's this all about, officer? The agent looked up from his notes, his eyes narrowing. Well, Mr. Johnson, it seems there may be more to this story than you're letting on. You see, Mrs. Wilkins filed a complaint against you last month, claiming you had been harassing her son. Jason felt the blood drain from his face. What? That's not true at all. I have no idea who Tyler is, and I certainly haven't been harassing anyone. The agent held up a hand. Now, let's not get defensive. I'm simply trying to get to the bottom of this. Mrs. Wilkins claims you've been deliberately parking your wheelchair in front of her son's car, blocking him from leaving the driveway. Jason shook his head vehemently. That's ridiculous. I've never even met Mrs. Wilkins or her son. This is all just a misunderstanding. The agent regarded him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Well, Mr. Johnson, I'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, I'd advise you to cooperate fully with the ADA compliance review. Failure to do so could result in some very serious consequences. With that, the agent turned and headed for the door, leaving Jason sitting there, stunned and confused. What on earth was going on? Jason's heart pounded as he stared out the window at Karen, her face contorted with rage. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the impending confrontation, and rolled over to the door. What do you want, Karen? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. What do I want? She spat, her eyes narrowing to slits. I want you to tear down that monstrosity a ramp you call. Her tirade was cut short as Mrs. Perez stepped in front of Jason, her hands on her hips. That's quite enough, Karen, she said, her tone firm. Jason has every right to make his home accessible, and I won't stand by and let you bully him. Karen's face flushed with indignation. Bully him. This has nothing to do with you, Perez. This is between me and that. She paused, glancing disdainfully at Jason's wheelchair. The cripple. Jason felt his blood boil at the slur, but before he could respond, Mrs. Perez raised a hand. "That's enough," she said, her voice laced with steel. "You need to leave, Karen, before I call the police." Karen's eyes widened, and for a moment, Jason thought she might actually back down. But then her expression hardened, and she leaned in, her voice dripping with venom. "This isn't over, Perez. And as for you, Jason, I hope you enjoy your little victory, because it won't last long. You think the ADA is on your side. Think again. I'm going to make your life a living hell." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed off, leaving Jason and Mrs. Perez staring after her in stunned silence. "Don't worry, Jason," Mrs. Perez said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I won't let her get away with this." Jason nodded, but his mind was racing. Karen's words had shaken him, and he couldn't help but worry that she might actually be able to make good on her threat. "Mrs. Perez, what if she's right?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if the ADA doesn't side with me? I've worked so hard to make this place accessible, and I can't bear the thought of losing it all." Mrs. Perez's expression softened, and she gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Jason, you know the ADA laws better than anyone. You've done everything by the book, and you have every right to be here. Don't let Karen's empty threats get to you." Jason nodded, but the knot of anxiety in his stomach refused to loosen. "I just can't shake the feeling that there's more to this than meets the eye. I mean, what was that about a complaint from Mrs. Wilkins and some guy named Tyler?" Mrs. Perez's brow furrowed. "I'm not sure, but we'll get to the bottom of it. In the meantime, I think it's time we pay Mrs. Wilkins a visit, don't you?" Jason couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope at the determination in her voice. With Mrs. Perez by his side, maybe he had a fighting chance against the impending storm. Jason took a deep breath as he and Mrs. Perez approached Mrs. Wilkins' front door. After Karen's ominous warning, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than met the eye, and the mention of a complaint from Mrs. Wilkins and some mysterious Tyler character only added to the growing sense of unease. Mrs. Perez gave the door a firm knock, and a moment later, it swung open to reveal a middle-aged woman with a severe expression. "Mrs. Wilkins, hello," Mrs. Perez said, her voice warm, but laced with an underlying steel. "I'm your neighbor, Mrs. Perez, and this is Jason Johnson. We were hoping we could have a word with you." Mrs. Wilkins' eyes narrowed, and she eyed them both with suspicion. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone clipped. "Well, we just wanted to discuss the complaint you filed against Jason regarding your son, Tyler," Mrs. Perez explained, her gaze unwavering. At the mention of Tyler's name, Mrs. Wilkins' expression darkened, and she glanced nervously over her shoulder. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. Jason felt a prickle of unease. Something wasn't right here. "Mrs. Wilkins, the ADA officer mentioned that you had accused Jason of harassing your son." Mrs. Perez pressed on, her voice calm but firm. "We just want to understand what's going on so we can clear this up." Mrs. Wilkins' eyes darted back and forth, and she fidgeted nervously. I don't know anything about that," she insisted, her voice wavering. "I haven't filed any complaints." Jason frowned, his suspicions growing. "But the officer said." "The officer is mistaken." Mrs. Wilkins interrupted, her voice rising in pitch. "I don't know what he's talking about. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have." She was cut off by the sound of a door slamming from inside the house, followed by the pounding of footsteps. A moment later, a young man emerged, his face etched with panic. "Mom, what's going on?" he demanded, his eyes darting between Mrs. Perez and Jason. Mrs. Wilkins whirled around, her expression a mixture of fear and defiance. "Nothing, Tyler. These people were just leaving." Tyler's gaze narrowed as he took in the scene, and Jason felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about the boy's demeanor that set him on edge. "Mom, what did you do?" Tyler asked, his voice low and menacing. Mrs. Wilkins' face crumpled, and she reached out to grasp her son's arm. "Tyler, please, I'd—" But before she could finish, Tyler shook off her hand and strode towards Jason, his eyes blazing with fury. "You," he snarled, "you're the one who's been harassing my mom, aren't you?" Jason felt his heart race as he gripped the wheels of his chair, bracing himself for whatever was about to come. Jason felt a surge of panic as Tyler advanced towards him, his eyes blazing with fury. He gripped the wheels of his chair, bracing himself for whatever was about to happen. "Hey now, let's all just calm down," Mrs. Perez interjected, stepping between Jason and Tyler. "There's been some kind of misunderstanding here, and we'd like to get to the bottom of it." Tyler glared at her, his jaw clenched tight. "Misunderstanding? This creep has been harassing my mom for weeks, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore." "That's not true," Jason protested, his voice trembling. "I've never even met your mother, let alone harassed her. There's been some kind of mistake." Tyler's eyes narrowed to slits. "Mistake? You think I'm an idiot? My mom filed a complaint against you, and now the ADA is investigating. You think you can just get away with it?" Jason felt his heart sinking. So the complaint was real, after all. But how could that be when he had no idea who Tyler or his mother were? "Tyler, please, let's just talk this through," Mrs. Perez said, her tone placating. "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for all of this." Tyler's gaze flickered to Mrs. Perez, and for a moment, Jason thought he might back down. But then his expression hardened, and he took a menacing step forward. "There's nothing to talk about," he growled. "This guy is going to pay for what he's done, one way or another." Jason's mind raced, desperately searching for a way to defuse the situation. But before he could speak, the sound of a car engine roaring to life caught their attention. They all turned to see Karen's black Lexus peeling out of the driveway, the tires kicking up a cloud of dust. "Karen!" Mrs. Perez shouted, but the car was already disappearing down the street. Tyler's eyes narrowed, and a twisted smile spread across his face. Well, looks like the cavalry has arrived." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever was about to happen, he knew it wasn't going to be good. Suddenly, the front door burst open, and a small, wiry man emerged, his eyes wild and his hair disheveled. "What the hell is going on out here?" he demanded, glaring at Jason and Mrs. Perez. Tyler turned to the man, his expression hardening. "Dad, this is the guy I was telling you about. The one who's been harassing Mom." The man's gaze narrowed as he fixed Jason with a menacing stare. "Is that so?" he growled, taking a step forward. Jason felt a surge of panic. He knew he had to do something, but with his wheelchair, he was at a severe disadvantage. He glanced desperately at Mrs. Perez, silently pleading for her to intervene. But as the man advanced, Jason realized that this was no longer just a misunderstanding. This was a full-blown confrontation, and he was right in the middle of it. Jason's heart pounded as the man advanced towards him, his eyes blazing with fury. He gripped the wheels of his chair, bracing himself for whatever was about to happen. But just as the man reached out to grab him, a familiar voice rang out from behind them. "Freeze, police. Step away from the man in the wheelchair." Jason whirled around to see Mrs. Perez standing on the porch, her phone in hand. She must have called the police while he was distracted. The man and Tyler froze, their expressions shifting from rage to panic as the sirens drew closer. "This isn't over, you bastard," Tyler spat, his eyes fixed on Jason. "Actually, I think it is," a new voice cut in, and Jason turned to see a pair of uniformed officers striding towards them. "What's going on here?" one of the officers demanded, his gaze sweeping over the tense scene. Mrs. Perez stepped forward, her voice steady. "Officers, These two men had been harassing my neighbor, Jason, and they were just about to assault him when I called you." The officer's eyes narrowed as they took in the situation, and Jason felt a surge of relief. Finally, someone was on his side. "All right, you two. Hands where I can see them," the first officer barked, and Tyler and his father reluctantly complied. As the officers cuffed the men and read them their rights, Jason watched in stunned silence, his mind reeling. How had this escalated so quickly? And what did it all have to do with the ADA complaint and Karen's threats? Mrs. Perez came to stand beside him, her expression grim. "Don't worry, Jason," she said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're going to get to the bottom of this, I promise." Jason nodded, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. He knew that even with the police involved, the battle was far from over. Karen was still out there, and she was clearly hell-bent on making his life a living hell. As the officers led Tyler and his father away, Jason turned to Mrs. Perez, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" Mrs. Perez's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening with determination. "Now we fight back. We're going to prove that you've done nothing wrong, and we're going to make sure that Karen and these other people pay for their actions." Jason felt a glimmer of hope at her words. With Mrs. Perez by his side, maybe he did have a chance of coming out of this unscathed. But as he watched the police cars disappear down the street, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a long and arduous battle.